After I hear children's moment, I thought, oh, the sermon is now over. She got clear point and personal illustration and great conclusion. You have heard all that you need to hear today. So what I'm going to say is like a commentary or some addition to her sermon. You know, when we have LA fire, there are three different responses from three different people. First response is that I don't care, and some people just ignore all the things, turn off TV and pretend that nothing happened. But we cannot do that. And some people say, oh, this is a good opportunity, let me scam people and pretend that I'm collecting money for the victims and that put them in my pocket. That they are fraud. And many people actually comes when some things happen, they pretend that they are helping other people. We cannot do that. So when we actually try to prevent that, we have some very transparent procedures when we ask people donations. The third option is to care for them, pray for them, do something about it. That's why we are collecting offerings and donations, but we know that there are other people who try to con people, so we have a very strict procedures. When we put the money in the offering, we have procedures to bring it to the safer place and put it in the bank. So our finance committee is one of the most strictly rule-following committee. So sometimes it's very annoying, but it is necessary, so I understand that. And they have very strict procedures. So just bear with us. But we want to do something about it as much as we can. And same thing happens when we have a conflict. There are three different responses. I call that peace-faking, peace-breaking, and peacemaking. We cannot have a peace-faking response or a peace-breaking response. We try to make peace. So we are peacemakers because we are the children of God. Peace-faking, that's typically like avoidance, as if there is no conflict. They just pretend that nothing happened. It's like denial. If you read the book of Samuel, 1 Samuel, you can see the priest called Eli. Maybe you don't know him, but you know Samuel, right? Young Samuel was an apprentice. Eli was the priest. And when Samuel slept, he heard voices calling his name, Samuel, Samuel. So young Samuel thought that, oh, Eli is calling me. So he went to Eli, did you call me? And he said, no, go back to your bed. Samuel heard again and went again and heard the same response. So third time, Eli thought, oh, God is calling Samuel. So he said to Samuel, when you hear the voice again, tell the voice, here I am, Lord. I'm ready to listen to you. So young Samuel, that was the first time for him to listen to God's voice. He said, here I am, Lord. Your servant is ready to listen to you. And then God said, I'm going to destroy Eli's family. His two sons will be dead, and Eli will die too. Young Samuel was so shocked, could not share it. But Eli encouraged him, tell me, frankly, what did you hear? And he shared what he heard, and actually that happened. Eli's two sons died in the battlefield. They lost the Ark of Covenant, and when he heard that news, Eli also stood up and then fell to the ground and died. Why the Eli's family was so completely destroyed? Because Eli ignored the conflict. When the Eli's two sons, they took the sacrifice and then ate them, the best portion of it. It's like embezzlement. It's like in today's version, when people give offering to the offering plate, they took it and put it in their own pocket and use it for their own personal benefit. And Eli knew that their children are doing that. He should discipline them or do something about it, but Eli didn't do anything. That's why denial of the conflict caused serious disaster to the family. And that can happen in these days, so we want to make sure that something like that does not happen. And when we see the conflict, we don't deny or we don't run away. Second option would be flight. But you read the story of Jacob and Esau. Jacob had conflict with his brother Esau. And Esau tried to kill Jacob. Jacob ran away and thought that he ran away from the conflict. But after many decades, when he came back, he still had to face the conflict, unresolved conflict. You may know that many decades later, you have some conflict with your family members or siblings. Still, it's there. So when you work in the church communities and other places, if you say, I'm sick and tired, I quit, and you leave, 10 years later, when you come back, conflict is still there. When you see the other person again, it's unresolved conflict. That's not going to be healthy. So, denial, running away does not help. Or the serious case, sometimes you despair and you commit a suicide. So the extreme of the peace faking is the suicide. Extreme of peace breaking is a murder. Either suicide or murder other person. They try to resolve the conflict in that way. That doesn't work, and that's not even biblical. Suicide and despair comes, it's too overwhelming. I cannot handle it. So last Sunday, I talked about my daughter, transgender daughter, June. She's in a psychiatric unit still because of the involuntary hospitalization. She's coming home tomorrow. But during the 2 weeks in the hospital, what she was trying to learn is to get the coping mechanism. We can call that resilience training, or I would call it spiritual muscle training. It's like physically, if you have a muscle, you can lift up 50-pound big object without any difficulties. But if you have no muscle, you cannot even lift up 5-pound bag. Same thing happens when your spirituality, spiritual muscle is trained. Then when things happen, you can handle it. But if your spiritual muscle is not developed, when something happens, you cannot handle it at all. It leads to despair and suicide. So some people ask, Pastor Lee, why do I have to come to church every Sunday? Then I ask you, do you go to gym every day? Yeah. Why? Because I need my muscle. That's right. So you can call our church spiritual in shape or spiritual 24-hour fitness center. You can come and then train yourself. Read the Bible every day like a running machine. Pray to God every day like the pull up and push up. And you can come to worship service every Sunday, listen to the sermon and listen to the wonderful music, and then have fellowship with other Christians. That helps you to have better resilience. Like your spiritual muscle is getting stronger and stronger. So when things happen, you have enough energy and strength to handle it. Without that muscle, you feel that despair and suicidal urge too easily because You cannot lift up the heavy things in life. And as I told you, life is full of challenges. You cannot exempt from it. So the only way to live one more day, one more month, one more year is to nurture your spiritual muscles and resilience and the community that can support you. So peace-faking is not working. The other side of it is peace-breaking aggression. The Pax Romana, we call that peace of a Roman Empire. They are peace actually breaking way. They dominate. They conquer the other countries by military power. Sometimes you can keep the peace like a very authoritarian voice. You can say, be quiet, and everybody is quiet. And you feel that that's peace? No, that's peace breaking actually. Dominance of supreme power. Some people pursue that as a peace maintaining and peacemaking way, but that's not the biblical way. Sometimes the people try to have a litigation, but Paul says, why do you have litigation in a secular court? You can have it in your own, among selves. Yeah, sometimes we have a lawsuit, even in church. Our former employer sue our church, right? So we have to handle it. But even though we don't go to litigation, if we handle it among ourselves, we can have a mediation or arbitration. That's two different ways of peacemaking. The difference between mediation and arbitration is the binding force. Whether it's binding legally, that's arbitration. You can have a settlement. If it's a mediation, you can just suggest a solution and everybody follows. So when we invite Paul Nicholson, he's coming to have some kind of mediation work. Try to suggest how we work each other, things like that. So if you are wondering why Paul Nicholson is coming, he's coming to have this mediation, peacemaking work among our church. So the peacemaking is the only way, the biblical way that we can take. But in this peacemaking work, there are a range of things that we can do. The first simple is to be overlooking or silent forgiveness. So you can have some small minor mistakes you can just overlook. If we point out all the mistakes that we have, people cannot live. It's too annoying. So even though we have so many mistakes, still we can continue our community life together by overlooking those minor mistakes. And that people are just different, and then you just go over. Otherwise, the best way of peacemaking, the Bible is recommending, is direct conversation. You go to the person directly and talk to them, frankly, without abusing or hurting others by words. You just share how you feel, frankly, and ask understanding by listening. So we can have a direct conversation. I'm going to go over this in more detail in the later weeks, but this is just an overview of a skeleton of all those peacemaking ways. But direct conversation is the best way. If something happens, don't come to me for me to talk to the other person. You can go to the person directly first and try to have a direct conversation. If you don't know how to talk to the person directly, that's one of the skills that you need to develop, because direct conversation, that's the first thing that we see from Matthew chapter 18. First, go to the person directly and talk to them. If it doesn't work, then maybe you can bring in mediator or arbitrator. And if it doesn't work, then maybe we can bring discipline. And before discipline, you can have emotional separation. One of the examples of emotional separation is what David did with King Saul. If you read the First Samuel again, you can read the story of King Saul and David. King Saul was so jealous and threatened by young David. When young David killed Goliath, the giant, people praised young David, and King Saul thought maybe David would be the next king, and he's going to be kicked out from the throne. So he tried to kill David. David tried to forgive him, tried to save King Saul's life twice. He tried to run away from the threat, but King Saul kept pursuing after him. So David had to run away from the country and went to the neighboring country, Philistine, the Palestine's area. So when that happened, that's the only way that David took emotional separation. He just said that, okay, I'm not going to deal with you now. I'll be away from you. Sometimes that helps for your own emotional and spiritual health. But this is a kind of a last resolution. But when the authorities are coming in, they can use the discipline, like bishop and district superintendent can come in and use the book of discipline and to resolve the conflict in a more like legal proceeding way. Once I was in Santa Clara, I became the judge of the conflict. One church member hit a pastor, so we had this assault case. However, the pastor did not want to go to a church, so we had this small disciplinary hearing. And then the person said, I'm sorry. Pastor says, I forgive you. And it ended up in a good reconciliation. But sometimes we have this discipline. Sometimes we can excommunicate the person from the church, or we can send the pastor, defrock the pastor as a pastor. Something happens when nothing helps and nothing can resolve the conflict. However, we don't want to go there when we have direct communication. So for the peacemaking effort, the best way is what Carol did with her neighbor. You just go to the neighbor, you have direct conversation, and have a meal together, and forgive each other, and build up the relationship. That's what we need to do to live together in this diverse community. And for that, we are called. So we don't want revenge. We want relationship building. And we want to build up God's kingdom and God's kingdom among God's kings, all the family members, with the different ethnic groups, with the different cultural groups, with the different stances. And somebody said, oh, I can be your friend, just don't tell me who you vote for. But you can just be friends, understand each other with the different stances. And that's what we are going to explore more in the coming weeks, how to do the direct communication, how to forgive each other, how to build up relationships. But let's not forget the goal and purpose. We want to build up relationship because relationship is the key for our mental health and our spiritual health. Without that mental health and spiritual muscle, we are going to lose it. Sometimes we want to kill other people or kill ourselves in extreme cases. Or we can assault or attack other people or hurt ourselves in different ways. So we want to prevent all those extreme cases, and we want to foster relationship building through this peacemaking and peacemaking effort. That's why Jesus said, blessed are those who are peacemakers. They will be called the children of God. And you are all called to build a relationship. And I hope that this year 2025, is the year of peacemaking among ourselves and among all the different churches. May God be with us.